Good evening and welcome to Baldacci on Business. I'm Bob Baldacci, and again, thanks for tuning in tonight. We have a great show. Our show tonight is going to focus on branding, marketing, and sales for the startup company. And we've taken you through quite a process over the last several months, beginning with putting together a business plan, developing a product, to tonight where we're at the point where we want to try to sell that product. And I'm really pleased and excited to have as my special guest tonight, first of all, on my immediate right, my wife, Elizabeth Baldacci. Elizabeth is a partner in our company, Baldacci Group. So thank you for being here tonight. On my immediate left is Taja Dockenforf, who is a partner with Pulp+Wire, a marketing company here in Portland. And again, Taja, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And Kim Stiver, who is marketing director of CD&M Communications in Portland, owned by a good friend of mine, Bob Cott. Again, Kim, thank you for being here. So tonight we have a limited amount of time. We have about a half an hour, so we want to cover branding your company, marketing and setting up the right infrastructure for marketing your company, and then dealing with the customer, and that's the sales process, which Elizabeth will handle. But first, I've asked Kim to, first of all, Kim, give us a little bit about your background and experience, and then talk a little bit about branding for the startup company.
Okay. I've been with CD&M Communications for about 6.5 years, and have been working in the industry for almost 20. So done a lot of B2B, B2C work, business to business, business to consumer. Yep. And the things that we're going to talk about tonight in terms of branding apply to your business, whether you are a startup as marketing to other businesses in a more industrial or high tech, or whether you're doing consumer type marketing. In my day-to-day work at CD&M, I work with a lot of large clients on both sides, and in my background, I've worked for both agencies and corporations. So in that sense, I've been where the viewers are. I've been on the side of having to go out and find marketing services, having to brand the company from that side of things, and then of course on the agency side. And I think that perspective will bring a lot of benefit tonight.
Great. I appreciate you being here. And Taja is going to be talking about marketing and using social media. But Taja, tell us a little bit about your background, your company, and a little bit about what you're going to be speaking about tonight. Absolutely.
Pulp+Wire is a kind of business development and creative strategic company where we help small businesses, smaller than CD&M, and entrepreneurs to medium-sized companies figure out their creative strategy. So from their brand right through to creative process to web, mobile, everything that they need to get their business launched and then recognized in the marketplace. So kicking off from where Kim's going to leave off, we'll be talking about technology, how to use it in your brand, consistency of creative concepts across the full line of what you're doing, and ways of being able to use your brand strategy and vision so that it makes sense creatively.
Great, thank you, and thank you for being here. And Elizabeth, talking about sales. A little bit about your background.
I started my career about 20 years ago, Kim, so don't feel badly, with Unum in sales, and then I moved to U.S. Healthcare, which was one of the first HMO models in the United States out of Philadelphia. And then since 1995, I was with Guardian Life Insurance Company out of New York, also in a sales capacity. And so for 20 years, I've seen, just had a ton of experience in sales and marketing, been through a merger, was on a merger advisory board where we had to basically combine two brands, come up with a complete rebranding of a couple of product lines. So I've just had a great experience in sales and have a lot to share in that regard.
Great, and thanks for being here, honey. I did say honey. First, let's talk about branding. Kim, how would you define it, and why is it so important for a startup or a small business company to think about branding their
Well,
company?
as you might guess, branding is much more than the logo, the color palette, the font choices, and all those things. Although a lot of people really do think that when they think of brand, that's what they think of. They think of the Nike swoosh, or they think of the Starbucks mermaid icon. But really, at its most foundational level, a brand is the sum of all the experiences that your target audience has with your business. So, and by target audience, that really has to be broad enough to not just include those customers that you want to go out and get, but your prospects. I mean, well, those are your customers you want to go out and get, but also the people that you work with, your community in which you're going to operate. Your employees are a core audience. So all of those audiences and all the experiences they have with your business and what it stands for, what it has values in, that is really the foundational level of your brand. So as an entrepreneur or a startup business, what's really important is that you really engineer or design all of those experiences so that they work together consistently, so that your customers and your prospects walk away with a consistent feeling, a personality, and a face to your brand that goes far beyond what your logo and your visuals will have. That's what they develop a relationship with.
Great. And how do you hire an ad agency? You know, again, our audience is primarily people who are thinking about starting a business, have an idea and beginning to put together a business plan or have a product that they want to try to market. So it's sort of at an embryonic stage. So what kind of advice or what kind of suggestions would you have in terms of dealing with an ad agency or a consultant to help them with developing a brand?
Yeah, well, there's actually some things that I think you can do on your own first before you do that. In fact, the more knowledgeable an entrepreneur is about their brand and what they think it's supposed to be before they go try to find a consultant or an agency, the better off you're going to be, because Taja and I are both from different spectrums of agencies. We're known for different specialty areas, and so if you kind of know who you are before you go approach a consultant, you're probably going to have a better match. But certainly chemistry is huge. You know, are you going to have someone that really is going to believe in what you're doing? Unfortunately, you're not really going to find someone that's going to take sweat equity in this for you.
You need to be paid.
Yeah, I mean, they are the most, unless
That's a nice idea.
Yeah. I mean, even freelancers, I mean, all of these folks, you know, they have bills to pay and they may really believe in what you're doing as well, but you need to be prepared to have a budget when you go to work with a consultant or an advertising agency. And as far as getting prepared on your own, or if you want to try to do some things on your own, I'm a huge fan of 3 books that I brought with me. And if you're willing to make the time and the dedication and the commitment to understanding a little bit about branding before you go talk to a consultant, you'll know what to ask for, and you'll know what you're paying for, and so that you don't pay for things that you don't need, because budget is going to be very tight. The most foundational one, if you don't read anything else that I recommend, and most people have heard of it but may not have read it, it's Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Yep.
And it is a fantastic book. Yep. Jim doesn't specifically talk a lot about branding, but he talks about your core. And a brand is really the personification of your core. It really is putting a face and a personality and a distinctiveness to the core. And so he teaches you through this book how to come up with your core model, which is made up of what you're best in the world at, and defining that very clearly. We can be best at the following. We are very passionate about this as a company. Collectively, we are going to foster this passion. We're going to drive this passion home. Our employees are going to understand this passion. And then thirdly, the third part of that core is, what is your economic engine? And knowing very, very clearly how that economic engine relates to your marketing plan. How are you going to get employees to understand what your economic drivers are and meet your goals? So if you do that in Good to Great, you'll have a foundation for your brand. Yep. And then the other 2, which are just great reads, Scott Bedbury's A Brand New World. And you can see all my dog-eared marks. These books are well used, and they really are great. He used to be the brand head at Nike and Starbucks, and really was an architect there of both of those brands. And my standby favorite for everything you should and shouldn't do, The 22 Immutable Laws of Branding, by Al Rees and Laura Rees, and another couple in the industry. So I really recommend those. Those go a long way to getting you prepared.
So as a company comes in the door and they've got a product or a new idea, what are some of the steps that you do take them through? I mean, assume they have enough money to hire CD&M.
Yep. If they have that, one of the things that we do, in fact, I have one coming up with a new client. Yep. We do a 2-part workshop, about 4 hours each. Wow. And we work on the agenda and all of that together, but it really gets to the heart of defining that core. And we do talk through with them about what makes them special, what makes them unique. Michael Porter, the famous Harvard business professor, he has said that your core is something that you can sustain and has a difference that you can preserve. And those are really the two things that we'll drill down in those workshops. And so we go through their competitors. I talked to a company once that told me that, well, I don't really know what's going on with my competitors. And I'm like, well, then how do you expect to differentiate? It's really critical, of course, that you understand your competitors. We talk about your audience. We take people through a workshop of understanding who are they trying to target, what their preferences are, and this will get into what Taja gets into as far as audience preferences and channels and how to reach them. So we work through those 2 days together, and then we come back with a plan that positions them effectively to compete and defines their brand.
That's excellent. So we're moving from branding, assuming that you've got an idea of who you are and what you are as a company, to, okay, now what? Where do we go from here? And that brings us to Taja.
Well, as Kim mentioned, we consider the brand the heartbeat of the company. So everything you do needs to support that heartbeat, and it kind of radiates outward. So knowing, after going through kind of the strategy process, what your passion statement is, what gets you up in the morning to want to be in this business? Value statements, what makes you unique? All those things are so important before you even start the creative process. So having that information is so fundamental to being able to really resonate with the customer and help pull out of them exactly visually who they're going to be. So the brand, that heartbeat, you then take that into the creative side and you start thinking about, okay, we know what your values and your positioning is, we know kind of who you are, color preferences. Now what are you trying to put out to the world? And you start with the logo sometimes. Okay, now that we have the brand essence, how is that going to make sense within the logo? Are you a very contemporary company? Are you more organic? Where do you see your company going? Are you a Whole Foods product? So we need to be talking to that crowd, but it's knowing the demographic you're trying to, for the most part, you're trying to get in front of, but also turn the opinion of, where's their tipping point? So being able to market directly to them in that regard. So once you've figured out that brand strategy, you apply that to the creative process. And then you develop the color profiles, the logo, and then that goes into, web. Who are you talking to again? Who's your target audience? That then goes into kind of the technology sector that we talk so much about, because everyone comes to us and says, well, we need a website, we need a logo. Well, great, as long as you know who you are first, that's a good starting point.
Right.
Now let's talk about the logo. Now let's talk about web. Everyone needs to have a website. First thing people are going to do when they hear about your business or you, they're going to go and Google you. I hate to say it, but it's true.
Absolutely.
So you need to have a presence. And if not, if they don't know your company name, even better, they say, okay, well, I need a design firm. They're going to Google design firm Maine. You want to make sure you come up in those search rankings as well. So making sure that your business is prominent and present. But making sure that when they get to your website, they instantly know who you are through your brand transparency, we'll call it. It's very important to be honest with your brand, so you know what that heartbeat is. Make sure that comes out in the logo, so when people see your logo, they see your tagline, they can quickly connect with who you are as a business.
And also the consistency too, Taja. Sometimes I've seen companies that sort of have an offline brand and then you go online and it's completely different,
Totally
or it
different
doesn't
color
match, and you think, is this the same company? Or you just get this sort of online personality that you question. So to me, the consistency is so critical. So no matter whether you're offline or online, somebody looks at you and they know who you are.
They don't want to think they're being spammed when they go to your website.
Exactly.
Where did I go?
Or the under construction sign that's up for two years.
Exactly.
It's better to get a page up.
Exactly, or the splash page that doesn't have enough information to be able to tell them enough about your business. And then if they've been on your website, they might want to see, okay, well, I want to know more about this company. What are they talking about? So that's where social networking comes into play, and making sure.
Let's talk about social networking, Facebook, Twitter. What does it all mean as far as a business is concerned? I mean, does it make sense?
Lots of different things.
Let's talk about it.
Many different things. And I guess the big question is, does every business need social media? And this is lots of conversations that we have, as I'm sure you have, when they come and say, do I need Facebook and Twitter and a blog and LinkedIn, and do I now need a Pinterest account? There's so much going on.
And what is Google Plus?
And what is Google Plus? And now there's Google Plus Business, and you have to be on that too. And how many different places do you need to be updating? And is there one software I can use to do it all? The answer is no. And you should never do that. But it's all about being, again, it comes back to your brand. Honesty, transparency, and if you're a small business, what do you honestly have time for? If you're a two-person shop, do all the social networking platforms make sense, or is that going to take you away from actually doing what you do so well, which is the core of your business? Or is it better to have a blog that you're able to talk once a week, put out a great little article or something that pertains to your business, have a Facebook page, and you're drawing people, you're making that connection. So maybe you have a Twitter that's tweeting out, what you're talking about in your blog. You're able to do a little bit more information on a Facebook site, but you're tying all three together. So you're going from Twitter maybe or Facebook, but you're always driving them back to your website. The other thing that I think gets overlooked is brand your Twitter page. There's no reason why it shouldn't have your logo and a background or a nice graphic that ties back again to your website and the overall visual brand of your company. Same goes for Facebook. You can have welcome pages. If you're a consumer business and you want to get more followers, show and reveal pages, so they have to like you before they can get into the site. Or if it's offering them a free coupon, very clever. It's a little sneaky, but it's great. And then it allows you to gain more followers, and you're capturing the audiences that you want in that regard. And then it comes into, LinkedIn, always a great place to be for lots of businesses, more on the business side, the B2B side versus the B2C. LinkedIn's a great place to be because you can have those business relationships. The conversation you're going to have in LinkedIn is going to be very different than the conversation you have on Facebook.
It is. Yeah.
And much shorter when you get to Twitter.
Let me ask you this: for a business looking at Facebook, is it appropriate to use Facebook as a platform for your business, your personal Facebook page?
I would always recommend doing a business. You have your personal page, and that's personal. That's where you can have your friends and family and everyone going back and forth, but set up a business page. There's just that air of professionalism that you have to have. You don't want it to be tied into your personal side. And when you're on your business page, talk business. Try not to bring your personal life into it.
Good advice.
Because that's where you can start getting into trouble. You don't want to get into that gray area. Make sure that whatever you're saying on Facebook is consistent to your business, and that you sometimes have a plan. It can be scripted a little bit.
Right.
This is what we're talking.
Plan, right?
Yeah, a well laid out plan goes a long way, especially for a small business. Because you could sit down on a Sunday afternoon with a nice big cup of coffee and lay out a full social media plan for yourself for a month, saying, I'm going to go look at blogs. Here are things I'm going to talk about on Facebook. And you could structure pretty much your own PR plan for social media in a matter of a month, and then in the morning on a Tuesday and a Thursday, sit down and execute on it, and that's going to take up so much less of your time. So and then there's QR codes too,
Well, let's talk
and mobile.
we've got a few more minutes.
I'll be quick about it.
No, but that's fine.
Then there's the mobile side where a lot of businesses, do I need to have a mobile website? It was kind of the same way of saying, yes, you need to have a website, absolutely, but you also do need to have some sort of a mobile presence now. We used to say, no, you can wait, but that's a secondary piece, but to do mobile web is not as expensive as it used to be. There are some very low cost ways of being able to have a mobile website, which is just a distilled version of your traditional site. So when people are looking at you on their phone, or trying to find directions, how to contact you, and they look you up on their phone, on their smartphone, they're able to get your contact information.
Okay.
And they don't have to scroll like all over the place trying, I can't find,
Exactly.
what I'm looking for.
And having it then convert nicely over to tablet as well.
Right.
So your website works on tablet and then distills down to mobile.
In terms of QR codes, how popular is that? Is that something that businesses really need to look at today?
It has a slower adoption rate than I would have liked to have seen, but they are still useful if they're used correctly. And I say a slower adoption rate only because I think people have used them so poorly in the past that it's turned people off to wanting to use them. But they're free. The QR stands for quick response code. So you can scan them with your phone. You're instantly getting information. So very quick response info. So if you had a business card, scan the QR code in the back, takes you right to maybe your mobile website. That's the kicker. Send them to mobile.
That's the thing I've seen with the QR codes is that you get all excited because I actually downloaded the scanner and I thought I was all up to date. And so you're looking at an ad and then you scan the QR code and it takes you to the same ad. So I almost want to see something different. Like if somebody has a card, you don't want to just scan to their card because you're looking at their card. So what is it going to take you to? Is it going to take you to a video or their website? So I think that's maybe what you're talking about is the misuse of QR codes.
It should take you to a special experience.
Show me something new.
Something specific.
Yeah, something that's going to have quick interest and be pertinent. So video is a wonderful example. I think video is great for QR codes. If you're going to send them to your website, make sure it's mobile. No one wants to go to a big site where they can't get around any longer. Or if it's a consumer product, you have a QR code on it, maybe it goes and talks about that product specifically. We did one for a coffee company. They scan the QR code. It talks about the adventure on the actual bag packaging. And then talks about the coffee that's in there. So there are some really innovative ways of using QR codes to benefit your business and your brand.
Good point. Now we branded the product or the service. We've developed a website, and now we got to try to sell the company and generate some business. So
The most important part.
Right.
Elizabeth,
So without
make us some
customers,
money.
none of that does anything for us. Exactly. So
We're not accessible unless you are.
so let's focus on sales and what From your experience, and I know you've had a lot of experience in a variety of sectors, what makes one product sell over another from your experience?
From my experience, it's the people. It's the sales experience. We've talked a lot. There's basically 3 key things about the sales experience. And the number one, which both Kim and Taja have said, is passion. If you are not passionate about what you're doing, don't do it. Because if you're not passionate, then it comes across to people as not being credible. If you are passionate and you believe in what you're doing, then that's going to come across loud and clear, and everyone else is going to get right on board with that. So that's number one. Be passionate about what you're doing as a salesperson. The second thing is develop a belief system, and this has to do with the core values. Sales and marketing are often put in the same sentence because they're so similar, and it's so critical that they're tied together. So you have to understand understand that belief system, and you have to be so sure yourself that product is sellable, the best thing on the street, and that customer is going to buy that product before they walk in the door. And that's what helps sales success. And the third thing is the customer experience. At the end of the day, you may have the best brand in the world, the best core belief system in the world, but if that customer has a rotten experience, they're not coming back. And it's really, really important that you have customer loyalty, because word of mouth is powerful both ways. It can work both ways for you. And you want it to work for you and not against you.
Also to that too is the same idea with actually what you're putting in your packaging. So not only selling it, but once they actually have it, the beautiful brand can sell the product, but once they get it home, if there's something that is not quality in
Absolutely.
there, it's the same idea. They're not going to come back and be a return buy.
Exactly. And one of the greatest things I heard in sales is that, Americans hate to be sold, but they love to buy. And that's very, very true. And a good model of that, I think, is Apple. When you walk into an Apple store, they're so certain that you're going to buy. You might not buy today, but you're going to buy at some point because it's Apple. So they walk in, and when you can't tell whether somebody's a customer service rep or a sales rep, you've got it going on. You walk into Apple, and they're just, oh, look at this is cool, and look at that. Did you see this new MacBook Pro? And they've got all this stuff going on, and they're not chasing you out of the store saying, hey, were you going to buy today?
They don't even do sales.
So
Right.
it's really not, it's an
right.
educational process. The people that work there love it. They're into it. They're techies. Sometimes they've got other jobs or they're in the IT sector, but they want to work there on the weekend because it's so cool. And that goes back to the core belief, the value, that I am so certain what I'm working for is neat. So that kind of experience with the customer, where you can go in and play around on a new app and not feel pressured, versus being chased down at a store with perfume. It could be like the greatest thing in the whole world, but if you're being chased with it, then we don't see the value in it. So.
And LL Bean has that customer experience as well, and I think they're a great example. Any comments at this point?
I was going to say, it all comes back to being honest and transparent
Right.
with the brand, with your sales, who you are as a business. I mean, it's just, we're not in a day and age where you can try and pull the wool over people's eyes anymore and hope that they believe what you're putting in front of them.
Absolutely, and I think to go back to the LL Bean example, another great example of sticking to your core. LL Bean has succeeded in getting customer loyalty, and customer loyalty and repeat buyers is how you're going to have that long-term sales success. There are not enough people in the world to only buy once. You have to have people that believe in your brand. LL Bean has had that 24 hours return, that 24-hour open policy. They don't have locks on the door. That's got to cost them a fortune to do, but that is part of who they are. They're always open. The other thing is their return policy. They've had this return policy for God knows how many years, 75 years, that if
100 years.
100 years,
Yeah, 100 years
that
this year.
if your boots wore out, you can return them. And so, I mean, that's got to cost them a lot of money, but clearly they've made the corporate decision at the top to say, if we change that, we are going to lose our core customer base. And so they've stuck to that core, and it's so important once you establish that core to keep that customer loyalty. So it's a good example.
We only have a few more minutes left, believe it or not. This has just flown by. I'd like to just briefly ask each of you, what's the best advice you can give a startup or a small business in branding and marketing and selling to their customers today? Just a few words of advice from each of you. And then after that, I want, if we have time, to talk about lessons learned from your experience dealing with clients or in your own business. So, advice.
Sure, Taja?
You want me to go
Yeah.
first?
Yeah, Taja.
We're sales and marketing people. We'll all jump in unless you tell us who's first.
Taja.
The biggest thing I think is from the customer side is knowing who you are before you go talk to an agency or a freelancer or or a small group like ourselves. Knowing where you want to see yourself go, knowing your vision, knowing 6 months where you want to be, a year where you want to be, 3 years, and then being able to clearly define that so that the team you're working with can help you bring that to fruition. And trust. Trust is a big one. Trust the people you're working with. They're looking out. They want to make you successful. They don't just want to take your money. I think that's a misconception.
Right.
We want to see you succeed. We want to see your company go national because that's, at the end of the day, what makes us happy, and that's our passion.
Very, very well stated. Kim,
Yep,
from
and
your perspective?
right on that, actually, if you do hire someone to work with you, you trust in their expertise, just like you said. I've seen so many times where we have a client that will say, hey, I've got this amount of budget. You start working through it, and then they stop and they go, well, I just want to go back to the beginning. Let's start over. Let's question this. Let's question that.
Yeah.
That's the quickest way to run up a huge tab.
Right.
So if you are not sure of the direction you want to go in, now we can help you shape that direction from a branding and marketing perspective.
Right.
But if you're not sure of your commitment to something, don't go starting down that road, because once that clock starts ticking, it's not fair to ask the agency just to say, hey, no, that's okay, don't worry about it, you come back when you're ready.
It's a waste of everyone's time and energy at the end of the day.
It is. And Elizabeth?
I would say that the cardinal rules of sales, there's 2 rules. Rule number 1 is the customer's always right. Rule number 2, when the customer's wrong, refer to rule number 1. That being said, sometimes your customer's unreasonable. Sometimes they're out of line. It doesn't matter. Do not win the battle. You will lose the war. If you're in sales, the customer's always right. Figure it out, work it out. Your end game is to get that customer to like you, to be loyal, and to recommend you.
Excellent.
To figure out how to circumvent the
That's right.
And again, this has been a great show. The websites for my guests are on the screen. Pulp+Wire, CD&M Communications, and obviously Baldacci Group. I would encourage you to contact our guests directly if you have any questions or you're interested in engaging their services. Having worked with both, they're terrific. Again, I want to thank you. We have just another minute left, and if we can, I wanted to just go around the table very quickly. Lessons learned from dealing with some of your clients. Elizabeth.
I'll start. I think in the first about 5 or 10 years of my career, I was more caught up talking about product and comparisons and differences than I was in building the trust relationship. And I think that instilling confidence in your end user or your buyer in building that trust relationship is really, really the most important thing. People buy on trust. All else equal, if your product and you're competitive and your branding's good, then you get the sale.
I would say don't chase the competition, drive the market. That's the biggest mistake I've seen.
Taja?
Transparency in what you're branding and making sure you know your business inside and out.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So that was good. I know, but that was...